Okay, welcome to another episode of Moose's Soapbox. This time we're talking about nuclear power, and in particular, nuclear fission power. Okay, now in the in the late 70s, early 80s, especially, and 1990s and beyond, I took part in protests against nuclear fission power. Okay, and I'll explain why, and why the dangers are still there, and why we should still be worrying about this. So there's two types of nuclear power. There's nuclear fission power, which is to do with the splitting of atoms. Okay, like you fire neutrons into uranium-235 and split them off and get the energy. Use that to boil water, which spins turbines, which generates electricity. And there's the other type of nuclear power, nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion is beautiful. It's still being worked on. It's the energy the sun uses. And we haven't got it perfected yet on Earth, but there's a lot of people working on it around the planet. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm looking forward to that coming. That's going to save the planet. Okay, but I want to talk in this video about nuclear fission power. Nuclear fission power is very dangerous. So let me just talk about some things that happened in the early 80s and late 70s, as well as the protests about nuclear fission power. We were very frightened about nuclear war. Okay, the Cold War was raging. There were real scares about America and Russia getting into a nuclear war. There was fear about Pakistan and India getting nuclear weapons. There was all sorts of things going on. Iran and all sorts of things going on where people were trying to build nuclear weapons in secret and things like that. But the big worry was nuclear, America and Russia. They had so many weapons they could destroy all life on the planet. Okay, back again. So, America and Russia. So they had enough nuclear weapons to destroy life on the planet many times over. It was very frightening. Nobody was really sure what Russia was going to do. It was a really nasty time. And also, to go along with that, there was a bunch of movies and also TV shows that came out as well around that time. Talking about prophecies for nuclear war and things. So two of the ones I really remember a lot was the Prophecies of Nostradamus. It was two TV episodes that appeared in Australia, one in about 1980 and one in about 1981, the Prophecies of Nostradamus. And the first one went through the Prophecy of Nostradamus and proved how Nostradamus had been right for all these predictions. And nuclear war was happening, and it was going to be starting in 1982, and the world was going to be all wound up in it by 1986. Absolute world war. I was in my final years of high school at the time, and we'd be going to school wondering whether we should be studying. Why are we working if the world's going into nuclear war? We should be building bunkers or moving out into the bush somewhere. And anyway, the second one aired in about 1981, the second episode of the Prophecies of Nostradamus, and it confirmed. It went through the prophecies again really quickly and confirmed that all the experts on Nostradamus had all been through all the evidence, and the world was going to be a nuclear war starting in 1982, and the whole world would be involved in a total nuclear war by 1986, and hundreds of millions of people would be dead. Okay. Now, I've looked everywhere for these TV shows since. I've been trying to buy them on DVD or VHS tape or whatever. There's virtually no mention of them at all on the internet, which is really strange. They were produced in Australia, because it was an Australian guy doing the hosting. I remember who the guy was. I can dig his name out if people want to know, but he was one of the main hosts. And so they were an Australian TV series of Prophecies of Nostradamus, two 1-hour specials, or two 1-hour TV shows. And the whole nation, the whole of Australia watched these things, and we were all talking about it at school the next day. And why are we studying? We're going to be dead in 4 years' time. What are we bothering studying for? All this was going on. So it was really frightening times. The thing with climate change now is frightening, but it's nothing compared to what this fear was. This was super frightening. And we'd be asking teachers, what do you think is going to happen? Is this real? Could it happen? And the teachers were just saying, I don't know. All of these experts on Nostradamus and experts and psychics and clairvoyants and all these people had all got together and produced these TV shows, and they were all just bullshit. Let's be honest. They'll bunk them. Bogus. Bullshit. And the funny thing was, after 1986 came and went, no nuclear war. 1987, no nuclear war. People started to breathe a sigh of relief. 1988, no nuclear war. 1989, 1990, no nuclear war. What? We should be dead by now. and then the 90s came and went, and then the 2000s came and went. Isn't it funny that nobody's ever gone back and found these people, these experts, and held them to account? Hey? Nobody's ever held them to account. Anyway, that's probably the subject for another video. Let's get back onto nuclear fission power. So I took part in protests in the 70s and 80s, and I also worked in the electricity industry in the UK for a number of years. And I worked on the generation side, and I also worked on the retailer side. And I was developing computer systems for these people and helping them negotiate contracts and work out what's happening in the markets and how to price their electricity and all that sort of stuff. Some very, very involved technical systems, and also models of how things were working so they could work out how to forecast and price electricity better. And I remember two senior people at my company, and it was a big company, there was two senior people at my company told me this story about French nuclear, and they were in the meetings with French nuclear while this was going on. And French nuclear were trying to get permission to build one new nuclear power plant, and they'd run out of arguments. They tried everything under the sun, to meet the country's future energy needs, to energy security, so we can sell excess energy to other countries, because wind, solar are no good, because coal's no good, there's no other option, we've only got nuclear, that's the only option, and on and on and on their arguments went for years and years and years, and they'd completely run out of arguments. Nothing worked. Their power plant wasn't going to get approved. Okay? And here's the argument they used to get it moving again. Okay? You ready? It's going to blow your pants off. Okay, so French nuclear said the cost of decommissioning one power plant is so high that we have to build 3 new nuclear power plants to pay for it. The cost of decommissioning one nuclear power plant is so high, we have to build 3 brand new nuclear power plants to pay for it. That was the argument they used. That's what they got through on, that one argument. We can't afford to decommission our old nuclear power plant, so we have to build 3 more. And they built 3 more. And then when it came time to decommission those 3, they're going to have to build 3 more for each one of those. So that's another 9 power plants. And when those 9 power plants need decommissioning, they're going to have to build 3 more for each one of those. And that's another 27 power plants. So you see, this is completely unsustainable. Absolutely unsustainable. Just on that alone, it's unsustainable. Okay, so that's French nuclear. The big problem, apart from the decommissioning costs, I think the safety for nuclear fission is pretty good. I think the plants are pretty safe these days. I don't lie awake at night worrying about the safety of the nuclear power plants themselves. They run very well. They're extremely well designed. There's so many safety features. Fukushima was a huge mistake. They know now what not to do. You shouldn't lower the ground by 20 metres. You should build it up instead, so it's completely tsunami and flood proof. They know now. I don't know why they couldn't learn then, but they definitely know now. Okay, but the big problem, the huge problem, the elephant in the room, is that nuclear waste storage. The storage of the byproducts of nuclear waste, of producing nuclear fission power, including the old reactor containment vessels and hardware. So you don't have to just store the fuel, you've got to store the old reactor containment vessels and hardware. They've got to be cut up and stored somewhere. That's the problem. Where do you store it? Okay. The vast majority of nuclear waste at this stage, as far as I can tell, is stored on-site at nuclear power plants or in temporary locations off-site somewhere. So the vast majority is stored in temporary storage locations because nobody's worked out a long-term storage solution yet. Nobody on the planet, as far as I can tell. Now, I could be wrong on some of these points because one other problem is the nuclear industry is very secretive. They're not transparent. They're very sneaky. They lobby governments behind closed doors. And one thing I really hate, I really hate, this made my blood boil when I heard it, but the nuclear industry got millions of dollars in funding for producing clean energy or green energy or carbon neutral energy. Okay, so come on. That's like a bank robber going into a bank and getting funding. Come on. You can't call nuclear fission energy clean or green. It might be carbon beneficial, but it's not clean or green, that's for sure. You've got to store the waste for, well, we're going to talk about the figures shortly, okay? But you can store the waste for a long time, and that's not cheap. Okay. So So the vast majority of nuclear waste, nuclear fission waste at this stage, is stored on site at nuclear power plants or in temporary storage locations off site, but there's no long-term. Australia, no medium or long-term storage facilities set up. USA's big hope was Yucca Mountain, but that's stalled and it's not going anywhere. It's half built or mostly built, but it's stalled. They can't get the final things through, and it's not going anywhere. So all USA has is a medium-term facility, which is a waste isolation pilot plant in New Mexico. It's even got pilot in the name because it's only a pilot plant, and it's certainly not long-term. It's a medium-term at best. And so USA's got no long-term storage. And I know for a fact that a lot of the nuclear waste is stored on site at nuclear power plants, just in drums, usually out in the weather or in flimsy sort of structures. It's not stored in anything proper. Okay, Finland is working on the world's first long-term storage facility. It's called Onkalo. There's a brilliant movie on this. See the description. There's a brilliant movie. It's called Into Eternity, made in 2010, and it's frightening. The movie is frightening. It's shot in such a dramatic way, and it goes through all the issues, and it's frightening. So construction on that Onkalo facility started in around about 2004. It's not going to complete until long after I'm dead. It's got over a century of build time, I think, as far as I can tell. So it's not going to be ready today or tomorrow or next year or in 10 years. It's decades away before it's ready. Okay, so even Finland, which is a great country, very clean, even their best solution is still decades away. Okay, and what that involves is putting nuclear waste deep underground in geologically stable areas and just hoping, hoping that the barrels don't rust and the containment vessels don't leak. And if they do leak, that there's no massive explosions that blow the facility apart and make it leak out into the surrounding environment. So it's all about hope. Putting the waste in geologically stable areas and hoping things don't go bad. Pretty frightening stuff, really. So let's talk about some half-lives. How long do you have to store this stuff? Okay, so the best measure there is a thing called half-life. And the half-life of something is how long it takes to break down half of it. So if this pen bottle lid here had a half-life of 1 year, at the end of 1 year there would be half of it left. And at the end of the next year, there would be 1/4 of it left. And at the end of the year after that, after 3 years, there'd be 1/8 left. Okay? So there's never none left. There's always some left. And it takes years and years and years for it to break down. Now, the half-life for uranium is around about 700 million years. 700 million years. That means if they put tons of it underground, or hundreds of tons of it underground, in 700 million years, there's still going to be half of it left. The whole thing will still be there, but it will have broken down into something else. And so half of it will still be uranium. The other half will be something else. The uranium broke down into whatever it might be. Okay. So 700 million years, and it's still dangerous at the end of 700 million years. Half of it's still super radioactive. So 700 million years after that, so 1.4 billion years, 1/4 of it will be left. 2.1 billion years' time, there'll still be 1/8 of it left. So still mountains and mountains of waste there. Very dangerous, very toxic, extremely dangerous for life. If it gets into the groundwater or gets out into the environment, extremely dangerous for whoever or whatever's living on the planet then. Within miles, within tens of miles of the location, maybe more. You never know. One of the elements uranium-235 breaks down into is thorium-231, and that's got a half-life. That's a very stable element. It's very stable. In other words, it takes a long time for it to break down. It's got a half-life of about 14 billion years, so older than the age of the universe. Okay, much older than the sun. The sun's only 5 billion years old. The universe is about 14 billion years old, so the half-life of thorium is 14 billion years, the age of the universe. So in 14 billion years' time, when the universe is twice as old as it is now, there'll still be half the amount of thorium there underground. It's much less toxic and radioactive than uranium-235, but it is still dangerous. You don't want to hold any of that stuff in your hand. You don't want to be in the same room as it. You don't want to be in the same town as it. Okay, you want to be many, many miles away. Okay, so that's probably all I need to say on nuclear fission power. Nuclear fusion power, I love it. I support it fully. I can't wait for it to be developed, but there's a lot of work going on around the planet. We're getting there. It could take another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, who knows. They're building a big plant in France, a big experimental plant, ITER, and so on, to hopefully work towards going into commercial production, but there's a lot of people working on it. So that's nuclear fusion, the joining together of atoms like the sun does. But I'm talking about nuclear fission in this video, so the splitting apart of atoms. That's very, very dangerous because they produce these long-term waste products, not just the fuel, but also the containment vessels and all the other apparatus that goes along with producing the energy. So nuclear fission, it's not a clean energy, it's not a green energy. It should not be getting any government subsidies or funding or clean energy bonuses or carbon credits or anything like that. It should be made to stand on its own 2 feet. I think the nuclear industry could improve their ethics a great deal, be more transparent, less sneaky, less lobbying behind closed doors. I think the industry needs to work on storage urgently, long-term safe storage. And every country's probably going to have to bite the bullet and do their own storage. We can't all send it all to some other country. We can't all send it all to India. We can't all send it all to the USA. Okay, so every country that produces nuclear fission power should be storing their own waste. I think that's what we need to do. Store it in their own backyard, not in someone else's backyard. And we need to be getting away from nuclear fission power. It's until we can work out the waste issue anyway. We should be getting away from nuclear fission power. If the waste issue is solved, then we can maybe talk about it again. But hopefully by then, nuclear fusion will be on track. Okay, so that's my 2 cents worth of nuclear fission. Thanks for watching another episode of Moose's Soapbox, and hope that was useful for you. Thanks for watching.